Welcome to the PolarX presentation. Now in this presentation, we're going to talk about the Alaska Range project, which is in the United States, and more specifically about the Zackly gold copper skarn and some associated copper gold porphyry mineralization. I'm sure you're all sophisticated investors, and I don't need to remind you there will be some forward-looking statements in this presentation. Now, the project in Alaska is owned by PolarX. It covers a series of high-grade copper and gold projects, and we've been exploring this since 2017. The main focus this year has been on a 3,000-metre core drilling program around the high-grade Zackly East prospect, and that's following up on previous intersections, which included 55 metres at 2.8 grams per tonne gold and 47 metres at 3.1 grams per tonne gold, both of which had about 0.5% copper. We've, in addition to that drilling, we've undertaken a high-resolution drone magnetic survey this year. That's helped locate the drill holes themselves, and it certainly highlighted a couple of very key structures, including a further 2 kilometres of untested strike length, and also helped us identify some new porphyry targets for further test work. Now, that's in addition to the existing Mars porphyry copper discovery that was first drilled last year, where we had over 100 metres at 0.2% copper and 0.1 gram per tonne gold. So there's certainly plenty of opportunity there for new discoveries. Now, we plan to fund this through our own shareholders on the follow-up at Zackly East. We completed a private placement and an SPP earlier this year and raised a total of just over $5 million. In terms of the porphyry exploration, that generally is a more expensive exercise with deeper holes and requiring helicopter support. So we were planning to do that with a number of potential joint venture partners, and we have been discussing that with those people. Unfortunately, COVID has put a little bit of a break on progress with that. That's something we hope to conclude by the end of this year. Now, a little bit about where the project is. The project is in South Central Alaska. It's a very easy location to get to. It's about a 6-hour drive predominantly on sealed roads, and we can get to within about 5 miles of the project on a good quality gravel road, and then a drill track into Zackly. Now, Alaska is a Tier 1 jurisdiction. It's generally underexplored by comparison with many other Tier 1 jurisdictions. And it is host to part of the world's greatest porphyry copper province. We have the Pebble project in Alaska itself, and then that belt of rocks extends through Canada, United States, Central America, and down into South America. PolarX is not alone as an Australian company in Alaska, with sort of the headlines there from Northern Star, who now own the high-grade Pogo underground gold mine, and South 32, who've invested in the Trilogy project, which is now a major joint venture. Our company is well supported by large institutional funds, particularly those from overseas. You can see Ruffer Gold Fund is our largest shareholder, followed by the management team, and then significant shareholdings by Lundin Mining Corporation, US Global, Golden Hill, and Lowell Resources Fund, and Oasis from Hong Kong, and then some high net worth investors from Australia. It's a tightly held stock, with the top 20 owning about 66% of the company. Now, the project itself covers about a 35-kilometre strike length. There's 260 kilometres of land there, all under state mining claims, and it's broken down into 2 projects. The Northern Stellar project here, which is 100% owned by PolarX, and which includes the high-grade Zackly skarn, and then a southern property, the Caribou Dome property, into which PolarX is earning for an option and earning agreement, and we can earn up to 80% of this southern block, which hosts the Caribou Dome high-grade copper deposit, and up to 90% of this northern block, which includes the Senator prospect. Now, the mineralisation at Zackly is a skarn type of mineralisation, that's often associated with porphyry copper mineralisation, and in this case sits on the edge of a very large 11 by 7 kilometre copper in soils anomaly. And that ticked a lot of the boxes for our geologists in terms of both this mineralisation confirming that there is porphyry potential in the region, but notwithstanding that there may be considerable upside at Zackly itself. The bulk of the work to date has been undertaken in this corridor between the Mars porphyry copper discovery, through the Zackly high-grade gold copper skarn, and then through to the Saturn geophysical anomaly. This area is about 12 kilometres in length. The mineralisation in the centre, Zackly, includes 3.4 million tonnes at 2 grams per tonne gold, 1.2% copper. That's in a zone which is about 1 kilometre in length, and we focused our work this year to the east of that. We will talk very briefly about the Mars discovery, but I won't say any more about Saturn, other than to say that Saturn is a blind target under about 150 metres of glacial gravels. We did drilling there last year. We have discovered alteration associated with porphyry style mineralisation. That requires further deep drilling to follow that up in due course. This photograph is taken obliquely looking along the length of Zackly, with the deposit coming through in this direction, and then here in the background you can actually see the outcrop of the Mars porphyry copper system. As we mentioned before, Zackly is quite an extensive system. It occurs over a strike length of almost 3 kilometres. The western 1 kilometre contains subvertical 4 to 5 metre thick mineralisation, high grade in copper and gold. And then as we move further to the east, we do see some very high grade intersections, notably here in the centre, and then again here out in the east. But notice that the drilling here is generally very, very shallow. So there are these huge untested areas, both underneath the central and eastern part, and also underneath the main resource, which is sort of shown here in this coloured outline. The focus of this year's programme has been here into the east. You can see why. This cross-section is from the main mineralisation. This is where the 3.4 million tonnes is. As you can see, it's subvertical, relatively narrow, at about 5 metres thickness. If we compare that with what we find nearly 1,000 metres further to the east, where we have much thicker, flatter line mineralisation, which is much more amenable to open pit mining, and with very high grades of gold and moderate grades of copper, at or very close to surface. And it's follow-up of this area that has been the priority for this year's field programmes. As I mentioned before, we did undertake a high-resolution drone survey. It's highlighted that the mineralisation is often associated with this very strong magnetic gradient. And most of the work that we've done this year around here has been following up around high-grade intersections along that gradient. And what we've recognised, though, is that there is at least another 2 kilometres here of untested, very strong magnetic gradient. That's on quite a steep south-facing slope that will require helicopter support, and that's something that we will come back to in due course. If we move on now to Mars, as I said, Mars is a porphyry copper discovery. It's noted at surface with some quite high grades of copper. This particular face assayed over 50% copper. Probably more importantly, it's associated with a large regional copper, molybdenum, gold and arsenic anomaly. There's also a magnetic anomaly and an induced polarisation anomaly, which indicates the likely presence of sulfide mineralisation at depth. We put one single drill hole into that last year. The bottom 100 metres of that hole intersected almost all grades of copper and gold mineralisation, averaged about 100 metres at 0.22% copper and 0.1 gram per tonne gold. That is still open at depth. The hole was unfortunately terminated in mineralisation at the end of the drill season, but it was in high grade, well, sorry, not high grade, but certainly very interesting mineralisation of a porphyry nature. These are porphyry B style and C style veins overprinting an earlier gabbroic intrusion. And of particular note, in the bottom 100 metres, these are associated with alteration, which indicates that this is moving towards the potassic core of a porphyry system, although not yet in it because we haven't actually seen the intrusive rocks which cause that mineralisation. There's certainly a lot of upside around this particular drill hole, and we do anticipate further drilling there in due course. We are, as mentioned before, seeking joint venture partners for the porphyry drilling because we do recognise that following up on this type of mineralisation will require extensive expenditure over a considerable period of time. So in summary, PolarX has a large holding, high quality project in a unexplored tier 1 jurisdiction. However, most of the early exploration risk has been removed. We believe there's potential for near-term resource expansion, particularly around the eastern part of Zackly. The drilling program there to date, we've drilled over 20 holes this season. We've only had assays from one hole back. So there's a lot of news flow coming over the next 6 to 10 weeks. And that will potentially deliver the near-term upside on that. And then following up on that, there will be exploration on the Mars and Saturn porphyries once we've identified and confirmed a joint venture partner for the next phase of drilling. So thank you very much for your attention.